So the UFC thing is today. I made a couple videos, but I'm telling you, there's something going on with it. And today I'm seeing even more people talking about this, and someone is connecting it to Baal worship. So I think the octagon is directly tied to Moloch. I go into more detail in my videos about why I believe this. I pinned one of the videos. The other two, though, you're gonna have to scroll. I'm pretty sure it says Octagon Part 3. It is really interesting. Am I saying that something's gonna happen right this second? No. And honestly, when it comes to like witchcraft stuff, I'm not like knowledgeable at all. But no matter what happens, just stay close to the Lord. That is your safe space.
Over the city, looking down on Washington, D.C., you'll see there are two main boulevards culminating in a pyramid. And just at the very top of the pyramid is a street cutting it off. And then within the triangle at the top, where the eye on the dollar bill is the Capitol. And the Capitol building sits there. It's a pyramid. Then it has the Cleopatra's Needle, which is a Washington monument. And the river, the long riverway, the long waterway is called the River Styx, which is where Pharaoh went into heaven on the River Styx. It is all laid out in Masonic symbolism, and the five-pointed star, which is a pentagram, has always been used. Satan worship, satanic worship, the five-pointed pentagram. And if you take the arms off of a pentagram, you have a pentagon. And the United States Pentagon is sitting exactly due north, aiming due north at the North Star Thuban, which is drawing power, according to the ancient Egyptians, for the god of war.
Just take a road map of Washington, D.C. Just take a look at it from the air, and you'll see what appears to be the goat of Mendez. And the goat of Mendez,
which is a symbol in Freemasonry. Right. It's a symbol. It's a demonic symbol within the Freemasonic.
You see the goat and the horns and the whole thing. The whole city is laid out like that. It's all over.
So what we're basically saying here is that there is nothing happening by chance.
It is a profound public ceremony that provides the legal mechanism for the full implementation of the new American order, the restoration of national sovereignty under the law of the land and God's jurisdiction. To lawfully complete the shift under the law of the land, the sovereigns of that land, the American people, must give their explicit consent. That is the purpose of the UFC Freedom 250. Far more than just a sporting event. It serves as the public ceremony required under Admiralty law rules, the people's visible endorsement of the transition into America's new order. Recap: the one-year process of restoring American sovereignty. The following shows the steps that have already been taken in the dismantling of Admiralty law. America recapturing its flag, June 14th, 2025. Flag Day celebrates the adoption of the American flag on June 14th, 1777. It's the true symbol of land jurisdiction and national sovereignty. It was on this day in 2025 that America initiated the legal process of removing itself from British Admiralty jurisdiction in order to restore its sovereignty and the law of the land. America asked to return to God on April 18, 2026. President Trump reads 2 Chronicles 7:11-12 to the nation as an appeal to return to God in recognition of the original covenant of 1776, the Declaration of Independence that places the nation under God's jurisdiction. Royal visit as witness, April 27th through the 30th, 2026. As the living trustee of the Admiralty-based system, the King and Queen serve as legally recognized eyewitnesses. Their presence functions as formal acknowledgement of America completing the required legal steps for sovereign independence. Fed chairman steps down, May 15, 2026. The Federal Reserve has played a central role in upholding the British Admiralty maritime law-based commercial system that powers the debt-based economy. By stepping down, it signals the shift back to American jurisdiction. The National Prayer of Dedication, May 17, 2026. This comes one full moon, a complete cycle, after the appeal to the nation to turn back to God. The National Jubilee of Prayer is the public act of rededicating America back to God. 2 Chronicles 7:14. It marks the withdrawal of consent from the 1871 commercial system that quietly gave jurisdiction back to the British maritime system and the restoration of the 1776 covenant. The new Fed chairman, sworn in May 25th, 2026, Kevin Warsh, was sworn in under the law of the land, which was clearly signaled by the absence of the gold-fringed flags indicating Admiralty jurisdiction, and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas administering the oath. Using the old system to end the old system. The transition touches every area of life, spiritual, legal, and economic. At its core is the replacement of the foreign-controlled, Admiralty law-based legal and financial system that has long dominated the nation. The legal process that began on Flag Day, June 14, 2025, is now nearing completion. By dismantling this structure, America removes the foundation that protected corruption, debt slavery, and treasonous actors loyal to that system. Resistance from those who benefited from that arrangement is inevitable. The transition will involve a turbulent battle against a deeply entrenched system. The storm, quote unquote, that will precede the people's new order. Though intense, this period will be swift and necessary to remove the remaining barriers to national sovereignty. While the national prayer of dedication was an essential step in establishing who the nation would place itself under, it was not the final legal trigger for America's new order. Under British Admiralty law, a shift of this magnitude still requires a visible public ritual that demonstrates the people's consent through participation and celebration. One of the oldest tools of the Admiralty system is now being used to secure that approval. Quote unquote, Ordo Ab Ko. UFC Freedom 250 provides exactly that public spectacle, a high visibility event on the White House lawn that fulfills the ritual requirement and completes the transition to the new American order. Ordo Ab Chaos. Ordo Ab Chaos is the hidden motto of high-level Freemasonry. For those placed in positions of power under their god, Satan, whom they believe to be the true savior and illuminator, it is the blueprint for controlled transformation. Create chaos first, then offer a new order as the solution. Classic problem reaction solution. Their system is designed to engineer or exploit disruption through wars, financial crashes, moral collapse, social division, and fear. Once the people are terrified, confused, and desperate, the controllers step forward with the pre-planned solution, their new systems of governance, their rules, their gods. However, because humans were created as powerful sovereigns of the physical realm, these systems cannot be lawfully imposed without the acquiescence of the governed. Their operating philosophy is simple. Keep the masses ignorant, entertained, and emotionally invested in the spectacle, and they will unknowingly consent to the changes that follow. To obtain that permission, they stage public spectacles of visible, controlled chaos. When people cheer, participate, and become emotionally invested, their maritime law treats that participation as consent. According to their legal doctrine, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Once that consent is obtained, they can roll out the changes that follow. UFC Freedom 250 is using this very same tool, but this time against the enemy. The spectacle will be on the spectacle on the White House South Lawn is not directed against the American people. Instead, it is aimed at dismantling the British Admiralty system that has long exercised jurisdiction over America. Through public participation, the event secures visible support for the lawful transition to the new American order under the law of the land. Instead of using their tool to further bind the American people to their system, it is being used to bring that system to an end. The symbolism of UFC Freedom 250. UFC Freedom 250 is the dramatic event that creates a major spectacle. It is classic Ordo Ab Chaos, a highly visible event placed on the White House South Lawn, the center of American power. The two main events. Main event, lightweight title. Ilia Topuria, undefeated foreign champion, versus Justin Gaethje, American interim champion. Co-main event, heavyweight interim title. Alex Pereira, Brazilian, versus Cyril Gane, French, two foreign fighters. While the heavyweight division represents the foreign established powers battling for control, the lightweight division represents the common people. An American fighter in the main event on sovereign land symbolizes the American people entertaining the final stage of the conflict on their own ground. The octagon cage where the fight takes place sits on the South Lawn, sovereign American land, not corporate territory. This is the same ground where the King and Queen stood as legal witnesses only a few weeks earlier. A fight inside the cage becomes the perfect public ritual, visible, emotional chaos that the crowd can cheer for. In this symbolic battle, the American crowd's loud support for Gates goes far beyond enthusiasm. By pouring their energy into the American fighter on sovereign American soil, the people, whether aware or not, are symbolically choosing the new land-based American order over the foreign maritime system. Their cheers act as acquiescence, the people's approval of the transition and acceptance of the storm that accompanies it. That consent makes the shift out of the old system lawful. The remaining events related to America's restored sovereignty. Several key events still remain in the process of restoring American sovereignty and completing the transition to the law of the land. UFC Freedom 250 on Flag Day, June 14th, 2026, exactly 1 year after June 14th, 25, when the legal process of removing Admiralty maritime law and restoring the law of the land began publicly. The American people will deliver their loud consent through Ordo Ab Chao on sovereign land. This allows for the transition that introduces the new system for the people. G7 meeting, June 15th to the 17th of 2026. Immediately afterward, President Trump will present the American people's newly accepted new order, including the storm that follows, to the G7 leaders. These leaders represent the main powers of that old system. In their legal and ritual rulebook, a major international system cannot be dissolved in private. Trump's presence delivers formal, in-person notice that America is exiting the old Admiralty system and activating the new land-based system. This forces their acknowledgement and prevents any future legal or ritual challenge. Trump's rally to end all rallies, June 24th, 2026. This serves as a victory lap that publicly celebrates the people's consent after formal notice has been given. Military bans will emphasize land-based authority, reinforcing the shift from maritime law to the land of, oh my goodness, I can't speak. The shift from maritime to law of the land power. The performance of Nessun Dorma, None Shall Sleep, the famous dramatic song from The Sum of All Fears, was played during the mass execution of traitors and deep state fighters. Figures. With the people's permission now granted for the necessary storm, the old system's protectors shall sleep no more as justice proceeds and their protections are removed. The Great American State Fair, June 25th, 2026 to July 10th, 2026, a massive joyous celebration stretching from the Capitol to the Washington Monument. Through exhibits, pavilions, performances, and family events, the nation will publicly rejoice in the people's consent to end the old system, restore the law of the land, and return the nation to God's jurisdiction, the beginning of America's golden age. Independence Day's 250th anniversary, July 4th, 2026. July 4th, 1776 marked America's public declaration of independence from British rule and its placement under God's jurisdiction of the land. That independence was later quietly reversed through the 1871 Municipal Corporation of D.C., placing the nation back under British Admiralty law. On the 250th anniversary, America completes the lawful process of reversing that quiet reversal. This is not merely a celebration. It marks the symbolic and legal completion of the return to the original 1776 covenant and the full restoration of the law of the land under God's jurisdiction. The storm. The public ceremony is only the beginning. What follows is the storm. Some may question how it can be right to move forward without the people's full knowledge of these events. Why not simply tell everyone the truth? Americans already know what they need to know. They understand that the system is broken and corrupt, and corruption is rampant. What they don't understand is that their permission must still be obtained through the rituals of the very Admiralty system most are unaware even exists. Rather than trying to educate the entire nation on that hidden system, which many would dismiss as conspiracy theory or outright impossible, the president is using the enemy's own rules against it for the benefit of the people he has been elected to serve. The storm begins when the existing system starts losing its legal and economic control. Yet the storm is more than their resistance. It is the process by which the new system displaces the old one. Those who built their wealth, influence, and power within the existing structure will suddenly find that the protections they relied upon are no longer there. Corruption will be exposed. Long protected bad actors will face accountability, and the legal, financial, and institutional foundations of the old system will be destroyed with the new American order. This is the true meaning of ordo ad kao. I don't know how to say that. The difference is that it's not being used to enslave the people. It's being used to dismantle the very structure that enslaved them. UFC Freedom 250 is therefore more than a sporting event. It serves as the symbolic moment when the people give their approval to the transition and to the storm that accompanies it. Though intense, the storm will be swift, as the enemy's moves have already been anticipated in order to minimize its effects. This is not only for the benefit of the American people and economy, but for the world as a whole, as the consequences of such a transition will be felt far beyond America's borders. What follows is the dawn of a new era. America will begin healing under the law of the land, restored to its rightful place under God's jurisdiction. Other nations will soon follow. This is order out of chaos, but for a free people under God. So that's that article, and I'm just like...
All right, people.
So the Freedom UFC 250 fight is actually a ritual. You do not want to watch this wrestling match. I did a very extensive breakdown on this specific day about what this is and how biblical this is. I matched it with the Greek gods, with the hexagon, with the fact that they're fighting, with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was meant to do this on this specific day. They are fighting at the White House on this specific day on behalf of the war god to give energy so that they can take over Iran. That is what this is. If you watch the show, if you attend the show, if you watch it at a bar or wherever you're going to watch it, they can harvest the energy through the black mirror up into the universe so that they can absorb the power from Mars, because that's the Mars god, in order to take over Iran. Okay? This is a very quick summary of my video. I go extremely in depth. If you choose to watch it, it's on my page. So the Lord just dropped a bomb on me regarding Jerusalem and Iran and Freedom 250 UFC for tomorrow. And yes, this will be the most historical sporting event of all time. Now, guys, remember, everything is biblical. Currently, we are in a war with Iran. Now, Iran used to be Persia. Now, remember, we are currently in a war with Iran for Jerusalem. Now, biblically, what was Iran it was Persia. Now, before we go to Persia and we start going into the Bible, we're going to talk about Ares. This is the Greek god of Ares. He's the son of Zeus, and he's a bloodlust-driven aspect of battle. He is the god of war. Also, we are talking about the god of Mars as well. Mars is also a Roman god of war. Now, tomorrow, Mars will be visible in the eastern sky tomorrow as a reddish point of light representing blood. So now we're going to go to Judges 10:6. Now I need you guys to pay close attention to this, okay? Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Lord. They served the Baals and the Ashtaroths and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines. And because the Israelites forsook the Lord and no longer served him, he became angry with them. He sold them into the hands of the Philistines and the Ammonites, who that year shattered and crushed them for 18 years. They oppressed all the Israelites on the east side of the Jordan and the Gilead, the land of the Amorites. Them doing this ritual is in service to those gods in Judges. Then we go to Judges 10:11. Now I need you guys to pay attention to this. The Lord replied, when the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites oppressed you, and you cried to me for help, did I not save you from their hands? But you have forsaken me and served other gods, so I will no longer save you. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you when you are in trouble. Now let's go to the meaning of the octagon. This is the tomb of Ephesus. It is an octagon. This belonged to Queen Cleopatra the 7th. Now what is the numbers for the fight? 250. You add 2 plus 5 is 7. Okay, so it was for Cleopatra the 7th, who was murdered in Ephesus in 41 BCE. Now, if you switch 41, that is a 14. That is tomorrow. And she was murdered by Mark Antony. St. Luke is there, Arsinoe the 5th, Cleopatra's sister, and Basilica of St. John monument is there as well. Now, in 2025, a skeleton belonging to a boy between the age of 11 to 14 years old had severe developmental abnormalities. He had like Treacher colon syndrome. I was going to show you guys a photo, but I just thought it was quite insensitive, so I didn't. But this traced the boy's genes to an influential Roman family. It might be related to serving these deities. And if you look, at the top of this is a pyramid. Okay, so now we're in Esther 7, and this is where what the day is really about. So we're in Esther 7. Now remember, we have 250, okay, the 250th year anniversary, okay? And then also, I want to remind you, it's Donald Trump's birthday supposedly tomorrow as well. And so this was meant for him to be at this point, at this very moment, because he loves UFC, always has. This was meant to be. Now, 2 plus 5 is 7. So we have Esther 7, okay? So it says, so the king and Haman, if you don't know the book of Esther, you need to read the book of Esther. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet, and as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king again asked Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Now we're in Esther 7:9. It says, then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, a pole reaching to a height of 50 cubic stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, impale him on it. 2, 5, and 0. Now let's talk about authority, why they're doing this. So Esther 8:11, the king granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them, and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. Now we're going to speak about the actual days of the 13th and the 14th. So it says, the Jews in Susa, however, have assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 15th they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. That is why rural Jews, those living in villages, observe the 14th, which is tomorrow, of the month of Adar. It's not the month of Adar right now, as a day of joy and feasting, a day for giving presents to each other. Today and tomorrow is of war, and on Monday would be a day of feast. Now, we may be during Shavuot. It's a feast of weeks, which falls in May or June, with exact dates that shift annually. We might be in Shavuot. I don't know. I'm not Jewish. Now, on Esther 9:26 through 28, it says, therefore these days were called Purim, for the word pur. Remember the cat, ball, pur. Because of everything written in this letter and because of what they had seen and what had happened to them, the Jews took it on to themselves to establish the custom that they and their descendants and all who joined them, including us, the Americans, should without fail observe these 2 days every year in that way prescribed and at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and observed in every generation, by every family, in every prominence, and in every city. And these days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. Makes sense why you're a cat calling me the other night. Now we're going to talk about black mirrors, and I'm talking about your cell phones, and I'm talking about your televisions. We're going to 1 Corinthians. This is King James Version. You cannot find this in the new version. 13:12. For now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known. This is regarding your cell phones and your televisions. So now we're going to talk about energy harvesting, guys. So we're going to 1 Colossians 1:24, and then we're going to go all the way down to 29. Okay, so hear me clearly. Now I rejoice in what I am suffering for you, and I will fill up in my flesh what is lacking in regard to Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, which is the church. Remember, we are a vessel to be filled up. I have become its servant by the commission God gave me to present to you the word of God in its fullness. The mystery that has been kept hidden for ages and generations, but is now disclosed to the Lord's people. To them, God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. He is the one we proclaim, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone fully mature in Christ. To this end, I strenuously contend with all the energy Christ so powerfully works in me. You have energy from Christ, filled in from Christ. And I finish this up in Philippians 12 through 18. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain, but even I am being poured out like a drink of offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith. I am glad and rejoice with all of you, so you too should be glad and rejoice with me. Do not watch the fight.
Yeah.